Hey, hey, hey. I am Xavier Fox, your host of Let's Talk About It with Xavier Fox. Thanks for joining me as we launch this first talk show of the Blaze 'em Up Cigar Radio. Well, I should say the first talk shows. These are our launch shows for this month. Today, my guest host is attorney April Preyar, and she is going to host What to Do If monthly. This is the legal issue show. So if you have legal issues or want to avoid them, make sure you tune in for this show. We'll tune in for all the launch shows through the end of the month of October to meet all the guest hosts. So April, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
I surely can, loud and clear. How you be today?
Awesome. I'm so excited to be here.
And
It's
I
good
am
to hear your voice.
I am so excited to have you. I am so looking forward to your shows because, legal issues kind of plague certain communities. So this is definitely going to be a beneficial show for everyone. But first, before we get into that part, I want to find out, introduce my guest host to the listeners. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am a Chicago girl, a Chi-Town girl, South Side, and born and raised in Chicago. I went to Duke University for undergrad. I went to George Washington University in our nation's capital. I actually lived on Capitol Hill for the 3 awful years that I was in law school. I hated every single minute of it,
Oh man.
except for every single minute, except for my criminal law class. So hence how I ended up doing criminal law. And I love the internship that I did there at the public defender's office. Loved it so much, in fact, that that's all I wanted to do was criminal defense. And that is essentially all I've done. I've done some police misconduct cases as well, but my specialty is criminal defense. So don't have your callers calling in here asking me about no probates and trusts and real estate, because I cannot help them with that. But if they want to know what to do when a police officer stops them, I can certainly assist with that.
Oh yeah, we definitely want to know what we should do then. So did you always want to be an attorney? Was that your childhood dream?
No, I've always multitasked. So I'm like you. I've always wanted to do multiple things. So when I was a kid, I wanted to be a pediatrician, a professional singer, and a writer. And so I have actually been able to do two of those loosely. So I have 6 books. That's why I say I've been able to be a writer. But the singing thing, I really can't sing. I can carry a tune. But in college, I was in it was the Black Gospel Choir. So we were able to go to Czechoslovakia. We were able to travel around. So I got to say I was a professional singer, I'm just singing in the background, keeping my voice low, singing, only girl singing tenor. So.
Wow, that's right. All right. Oh, all right. So, yeah, I wanted to be a judge, believe it or not, when I was a kid. I wanted to be a judge,
Really?
a singer, and a model actress. So, I'm still kind of on the mic and in front of the camera part and then the shows and events. But the judge part, I changed my mind when somebody told me that you had to be voted in to be a judge. And, with my young childlike mind back then, I was thinking to myself, who's going to vote for me?
What? Oh my goodness. Oh, wow.
So I'm like, well, nobody's going to vote for me to be judge. So I guess I should choose something else. I thought I had to count my voters at 10. I had to have all my voters for judge at 10. So tell us, you do a lot of things now. We both are definitely serial entrepreneurs. So tell us about Justice Junkie.
So Justice Junkie was actually born out of anger and frustration. I did a 3 a.m. rant to my friends on Facebook, hoping it would reach them and their kids about basically Black moms and grandmas sending their kids off, thinking they're giving them sound legal advice and actually sending them down the river. So I did this long rant, threw on a shirt, looking crazy. I mean, it's still up there. It's still on Facebook, looking crazy. And I got 5,000 views. I said, oh, okay, cool. There was this girl who was doing social media for my firm who had been pushing me to do video. Anyway, I was like, yeah, I'm not really interested in video. So then the next week we did another one. That one was a flop. It only got 200 views. And then the third one we did, is now up to 2.5 million, but it got 1.2 million views in a day. So
Oh,
that's when I knew I was on to something. And then I said, okay, well, let me start doing a video a week, just breaking down legal jargon, the stuff we don't get taught in school, but you're expected to know on the spot if a police officer approaches you. You're expected to know on the spot if you actually land in court. So I started doing these videos weekly and it kind of caught on. And after 2 months, I was like, okay, well, let me come up with like a little moniker and a slogan. And so Justice Junkie actually comes. So I was going to be Lady Law or Lady Justice. And when I would Google those or look those up on Facebook, they were all taken.
oh,
So I spelled Justice Junkie a little bit differently. Justice is Justus instead of the traditional spelling, because there's a saying that there is no justice, there's just us. And so
no.
I played with that a lot because I was like, Black and brown people are often marginalized by the justice system. We are abused by the justice system. And I was like, well, what if I can bring justice from the courtrooms to the corners? And that's what Justice Junkie was about. So I just started on Facebook, started putting up videos, started getting asked to speak. I had always spoken, but started getting asked to speak in schools. And then what I realized is I was reaching my peers and people my age. You know, the Facebook crowd is now is a little bit of older crowd. We're not exactly the TikTokers. So, but I wasn't reaching the kids who were actually landing in my office. So that's when I birthed the board game. So the Justice Junkie led to the board game because I figured I could reach kids who were trapped in school 5 hours a day. It would give them a reprieve from their social studies class or from physics, and they would get to do something fun and accidentally end up learning. And that's when I came up with Trials and Triumph and worked on that for several months, play tested it on kids, and then launched it.
And that was my next question, because I know you have a game out. So tell us about the game. What is it called again?
It's called Trials and Triumph. And the reason is I wanted to have, ups and downs that kids go through, but ultimately end up triumphant, ultimately end up avoiding the criminal justice system. So the way the game works is there are two worlds. There's a world of possibilities where you graduate high school, you buy your first puppy, you buy your first rental property, you go to medical school. And along the way, there are red squares on the path that say flashing lights, and that's police contact. So maybe your tail light is out and the cop pulls you over and gives you a warning, or maybe your car matches the description for one that was just used in a drive-by shooting. You don't know until you pull a card, and there are 54 real life scenarios, all that I've seen. A couple are from the media, but most have walked into my office. And you pull the card, and on the card, not only does it give you a scenario that you could find yourself in, but it gives you rules. So there are 7 rules of police encounters that are reiterated throughout the game. So that way, whether you play the game for 25 minutes or you play the game 25 times, you walk out of that room knowing what to do if you get stopped by police and you're in a department store, you get stopped by police and you're in a parking lot, or you're in an alley, or you're walking to school, or you're in school. You know what to do because you've seen the scenario. And kids learn and adults learn better from experiential learning than we do from being lectured to.
Wow, because I would.
Oh, and I didn't tell you about the second world. The second world is a world of trouble where you get stuck in jail and you're trying to get out and trying to make bond and all of that.
Oh yeah, we don't want to be in that second world. But I was gonna say, as an adult, I would have no idea what to say or do if a police officer stopped me in a department store. When does that ever happen?
Well, it would normally be a security guard would stop you and detain you for the police. And so I have a couple scenarios like that where most Black folks have gotten followed around department stores because they make you feel like you shouldn't be there. And so what if getting followed turns into an actual confrontation and you're being held for the police? That's how the scenario plays out. And then the police come search your bag or search your pockets or search your purse and either find something or don't find something. How do you behave in that situation?
Oh man, that I would be quite irritated if that ever happened. Because I have things to do. I don't have time for you to be detaining me for nothing. Oh my goodness, that would be irritating. Okay, so I'm still, getting into your personal stuff, even though we've touched on a bit of the business stuff. So what has been your proudest moment?
That's interesting that you say that. It's actually related to the game. So my mom died about coming on 2 years ago. And so just so happened she fell ill suddenly November, almost 3 years ago. Yeah, November 2018. And it just so happened the day before she fell ill was the day I got the prototype for the game. And so that was our last conversation. So I was dog tired. It was Friday. I was at home. The prototype came in the mail and I had been talking about it. I had shown her the drawings and I was all excited because my mom was a school teacher for almost 40 years.
Okay.
And so I found it as a way like to pair what I do with what she did. So I was dog tired. I didn't want to get up. My parents lived about 10 minutes from me. I said, girl, get out the bed. So I took my little nap, got out the bed, took the prototype over to her. And when I tell you my mom cooed and all this, like a little kid reading each little square on the, I didn't have the cards at the time. I just had the actual board. So she went through each square. She's cool. I mean, literally like, oh,
That is so great.
I got to the point I was like, Ma, you tripping. Come on, Ma. I mean, for about 40 minutes. And she was just glowing and beaming. And then the very next day, she fell ill. She lived for another 15 months, but she fell ill and was unable to talk or walk again. So that was literally our last conversation. And so that was just, and I did her eulogy at her funeral. I told the same story there. That was just a really proud moment for me that I was on the right track, that all this schooling and all the hardship I had gone through in practicing law was for that moment, that this was a culmination of my career. And so that was my proudest moment, that she was able to see that, even though she wasn't able to see much that came after it. With like the play testing, I would try to show her pictures on my phone, or I would show her, she saw me on ABC News, she saw me on NBC News, and I would try to show her these things, but nothing really amounted to that moment when she was well and healthy and we could have an actual conversation. I could see her just natural reaction and excitement about a teaching tool, because she loved kids. And my cousins will joke that, they would get annoyed because she would buy them books for Christmas instead of toys. They'd be like, come on, Auntie, like for real. So she loved kids, and she would make kids sit down and tell you what they learned. And, she would sit and have a whole conversation with a 3-year-old about what they learned in preschool that day. So I knew that creating an educational tool was a big deal for her.
Okay, that's quite a memory as well. At least you did get to share that moment with her. I know that's forever ingrained. That's a great memory. Next question is, what was your toughest case? Okay, you somehow hit your mute again. Take yourself off mute.
I did, because there was ringing in the background. There's a landline here. Yeah. So my what'd you say? My toughest case. Okay. So I always say this, like, if people say that they have a lawyer who's never lost a case, that they need to run, because you learn your greatest lessons from the cases you lose, not the ones you win. So either that lawyer is a liar, or they haven't tried enough cases to lose yet. But anyway, my toughest case was actually not a criminal case. It was a civil rights case. So it was a police misconduct case. It was a young man. He was 21, but he was at an alternative school, and he was going to be the first person in his family to graduate from high school.
Okay.
He was Puerto Rican. He was raised by a single mom, and the single mom had a great husband who was his stepdad, who was Black. And they just had, this great family. He had a brother who was outside of the home, but he was still at home. But he had mental health issues. And so he had been suicidal in the past. He had barricaded himself in his room before and tried to hang himself, I believe.
Oh my.
And so this time he barricaded himself in his room. His mom knew something was very wrong. She did not call 911. She called the local, what do they call it? Like mental health facility. They told her, hang up, call 911. She calls 911, specifically asked for the paramedics, not the police. They say, yeah. So, but most people don't know that dispatch calls are oftentimes like a bad game of telephone,
Mm.
where the message that comes in is not the message that's received, or parts of it are received. So she calls for the paramedics. Actually, firefighters come. When they see that the room is barricaded, they say, oh, nope, none we can do for you. They call the police.
Mm.
The police are in his house for 90 seconds. We know that because we have all the times of when the people arrive, when the police arrive at the house, when the bad events I'm about to tell you about transpire. We know that the time. So that means that there's no negotiation taking place. Nobody is trying to talk this kid down. Nobody is trying to see, hey, son, are you suicidal? So what they do is they jam the door open about 6 inches. The kid, who I'm putting in quotes, the 21-year-old, is actually about 6'2" and 300 pounds. He's very overweight. And they peer through the little crack in the door. It's all black in his room. The police shoot through the door with a taser first. They tase him. They say it doesn't have an effect. They tase him twice. And then the shooter comes along and shoots the kid twice in the chest. They shoot him because he has a knife in his hand. But remember, he's got a barricade between him and the cops. So it's not like he's going to lunge through. He's 300 pounds and 6'2". So he can't get through that little crack. So he's not a threat to any of them. And he has he collected knives. So he had a knife in his hand that was it was like a pocket knife. And so they see the knife in his hand, they taser him twice in the chest, and then they shoot him twice in the chest, and he dies.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so we take it to trial. I get to know the mom really well. I get to know the stepdad really well. The stepdad is the star witness because he saw everything. He was in the kitchen when it happened. That's where the kid's room was off the kitchen. And the dad was the tallest person in the room. He just happened to be like 6'3", 6'4". So he towered over all these white cops and firefighters, and he was able to see the best. And so he was our star witness. And the heartbreaking part of it was, obviously, we lost the case. One, we had one Black juror. Everybody else was white. The one Black juror was the daughter of a state trooper. And sometimes judges allow you to talk to jurors after a case is ended. And we stuck around for the additional abuse and sat and talked. And the first thing she said was, oh my God, when I heard what happened, all I thought was, you poor baby. And she was talking about the cop who was the shooter.
What?
You poor baby, you had to take someone's life.
Oh my God.
That's when I was done. I was absolutely done. So it was the worst case ever because for the mom, so the funny thing about and I'm sure I'll get this from a lot of other female attorneys, oftentimes when female attorneys do trials with male attorneys, I did this with 2 other men, we end up being the babysitter, the comforter, the clothing designer, the personal shopper for whoever our client is. And so because I'm the woman, I just kind of was assigned to, and I mean, it's just my nature too, to nurture the mom. And so, I have this rapport with the mom, but a rapport with the mom, checking on her throughout the trial, and she's hearing all this very devastating and difficult evidence come in. And when we lost, she wailed like the funeral was happening all over again.
I can only imagine that she would. You have a kid first to graduate from high school in an alternative school at 21 with mental issues. And this is what happens. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So that was the worst case. So I did it with my law partner. I'm trying to remember who else we did it with, my law partner at the time. And I say we all collectively grieved for at least 2 weeks. Like there was just a heaviness in the office. There was just, we just felt like we had done everything we could and we still failed. We still failed the family. There was nothing. Oh, I remember. It was an older Black attorney because it was actually his case. And he's a legend here. His name is Stan Willis. So it was Stan's case. He brought us on to help him. And it was just like, it was like attending a funeral. I didn't know the kid at the time, but it was like attending a funeral the second time. And the mother just wailed, and we checked on her afterwards. And like, it was like her grief started up all over again after losing her child.
So on what premise was that okay? I mean, if you lost, so the police officers were not reprimanded at all. Under what premise was that okay for them to do that? How did they justify that?
Well, this is a few things. One, people need to know that even if, say, we had won the case and we had won $10 million for the family, the cop would never be, he would never be reprimanded. He would never be suspended. Like, if you shoot somebody, you are initially, your weapon is taken and your badge is taken so an investigation can be done, right? So that's not a reprimand. That's just so that the investigations can take place. Aside from that, there are cops who have killed multiple people. We've sued cops who have shot multiple people who were never disciplined a day, never lost a day of pay. It doesn't affect them. And one of the most recent trials I did, it was interesting because the case was 10 years old. Every single one of those cops who had done dirt 10 years ago had rank advanced. So if they were a sergeant on the day of the case, they're now a lieutenant. If they were a patrolman on that day, they're now a sergeant or they're a training officer. So it doesn't stop them. And so when people come into my office and say, man, I don't care nothing about the money, I just want this cop's badge, I'm like, homie, that is the last thing you will get. You will not get his badge. You will not affect his career, and you will not hit him in the pocket. Because what people don't understand is when we have these lawsuits against the city, you and I pay. Taxpayers pay.
Wow.
Not the cop. The only way the cop pays is if we get punitive damages, and punitive damages are very, very rare. But this is something we are not allowed to explain to the jury. We're not allowed to tell them who's cutting the check at the end of the case. And the cops are not allowed to then hit the stand and say, oh, I'm so broke, I'm so poor. You know what I'm saying? You know, I have alimony to pay, I have child support to pay, because you're not supposed to feel sympathetic for them either. If they do hit the stand and say that, then we can tell the jury where the money comes from. But most attorneys are smart enough to coach their cop clients into not saying that stuff. But the premise was that it wasn't excessive force.
What?
That it wasn't excessive force because he had a knife. Knife cases are very tricky. Remember, Laquan McDonald's case was a knife case. That was the whole issue. There's this whole, I think it's the 12-foot rule. I forget, 12-foot rule, 18-foot. Basically meaning you can travel 12 feet, 18 feet, 21 feet, whatever, with a knife in your hand before I even take my gun out my holster. And so the whole notion of knives and getting stabbed in the throat or getting stabbed in the chest or getting stabbed through your bulletproof vest is always a reason for the cop to say, well, that's why I used deadly force. I feared for my life. So as BS as it is, that, I mean, literally, this kid was 300 pounds. There was no way in hell he was even gonna get his arm through the little crack that they had created in that door, because he was barricading it with like his dresser and some other things in the room. There was no way that he was a threat to anybody on the other side of that door. He was a threat to nobody but himself. They were called in because of a suicide attempt, and instead he lives in a body bag. And then this is the most remarkable thing about that. We had an almost identical case. Remember, this kid was Puerto Rican. We had an almost identical case with a 40-year-old white man. Same thing, suicidal, same thing, had a knife, a little bitty knife. I think it was like a paring knife. Same thing, family member calls, oh, I'm fearful, my husband is suicidal, police come in the door, taser him in the chest. Then they shoot him 6 times, shoot every organ, the bullets ricochet through every organ except for his heart and his brain. Took him, I think, 10 months to heal. He had to heal open. They had, you know, like when they leave your wounds open.
He healed?
He lived. He healed. He lived. For that case, we got $3 million. But what's the difference? He's a white man, and the other client was Puerto Rican. You Puerto Rican, you Black, you Mexican. The jurors, who are normally all white, are going to decide that your life ain't worth jack. Whereas if you are a white man who is 40 years old, then your life is worth everything. And we got a $3 million settlement for that.
Wow. And you know, here's my thing. I see that in the legal system. I also see that in the medical system as well. You know, you go and it's like some of us really believe in the medical system. What is it? The industry, because they are practicing, you know, and it's an industry where they make money. And I believe that when it comes to who lives or dies or who gets the better treatment or not, I definitely believe, just like with the legal system, if you're Black or Hispanic, you know, your life is not worth that. I think that you see that. I don't know if you've watched, what is it called? John Q.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And,
Years ago.
and you see that, where the white person, that life is more valued than the Black person's life. So yeah, that's definitely a story. I'm trying to get into your personal life a little bit. I'm maybe because my next question is going to seem very trivial. However, because I talk about relationships all the time, I have to ask you.
Oh my
Are-
gosh. Avoid this. Like this was not our, what was your panel called that I was on? Brothers. I just saw
sister
that.
circle. Yeah, you did
Okay.
sister circle years ago. So I have to ask you, as a
Hit me with
relationship
it.
person, are you single?
I am single. I'm glad there's no camera. I'm glad there's no, I thought I was gonna be able to avoid this with you.
Oh, you can't get away from it. It is your launch show. The listeners have to get to know you. They have to
Oh God.
they can't see you because it is radio this time, so they can't see how beautiful you are. But they saw the photos and stuff, intelligent and all that kind of stuff. So they're getting to know you. And so if you had to say, I'm gonna ask the question
They
that
can't see me blushing either.
every single person hates this question, but I'm asking it on this show because everybody hates this question. So
Okay.
why do you think you're single?
Oh wow. Because nobody's proposed to me. There you go.
Okay.
That's the easy answer. That's my easy out.
Okay. And
there are various reasons. I mean, the one is I don't believe that I found the person who I'm aligned with enough to spend my life with. So I mean, that's the true answer.
And I know that you're quite busy. I'm very busy, and so many of my friends get on me about not dating. But sometimes I just think with the options that you run into, sometimes I just feel like my time is better spent working on my business. So I'm going to ask you, I mean, do you actually take out time to date? I mean, you've developed a game and, you have a practice of your own going on and you have, a lot of stuff going on. So do you actually take time to date?
Well, it's interesting that you say that because I mean, the pandemic, I was probably more terrified than most. And so I just kind of shut down for, I don't know, until a few months ago. So I wasn't even open to dating. I don't like the online thing. I really like to feel people's energy in person.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't even open to it. And so just, with the world opening up gradually, so is my dating life. It's opening up gradually. So yeah, I make time for it, but like I said, I really have to connect with your energy in order to spend time with you. Like, and the one thing I say is I don't date dumb men. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I do not date dummies. And so if I sense any part of you is not smart, is not that you don't have critical thinking skills, that mm-hmm. if you don't have a chance to even take me to lunch. So that's, yeah. So yeah, I do make time for it. I don't hide behind being busy because I think there's time and I think there's enough time in life to make time for whatever is truly important to you, to return phone calls, to text people back, to make time to have dinner with them. I always think there's time for that. And I honestly think women are better at making time for those things. Whereas when a man is building an empire, building a business, he'll say he's too busy. But I'm like, bruh, you ain't Barack Obama. Even Barack had time for Michelle. So, right. So no, I make time for it. And the thing is, it's funny because as practical as I am in my career, and as I guess as much as of a pragmatist as I am in general, when it comes to relationships, I am like the hopeless romantic. I am the consummate optimist, and it doesn't matter how badly relationships have gone in the past. Like I am always open to love.
Oh, that is good because, as you talk about how bad things have gone in the past. Healing is, such an issue. I think people dating, if they're over 40, really are affected by the lack of attention that people give to the importance of actually healing from past relationships. Unfortunately, I think that some of our men are the worst cases of it, because you remember that book came out, Men Don't Heal, They Hoe. And I think that
What
book,
was it? They don't heal, they what?
they hoe. Hoe?
Oh, okay. Ho.
Yeah. Or H-E, what is it? H-E-A?
It's Heaux. I think that's reserved for us. I think we supposed to be the haves.
That's what they say, but I think the behavior dictates the title. My dad said if it's dressed like a mailman and somebody mistakes it for a mailman, you can't be mad. So I think the behavior, if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, there you go. I have one more scenario for you. And I talked to you about this when it actually happened some years ago. And I was really surprised at your answer. And then I was even more surprised at what actually wound up happening in the case. I think I told you I had a cousin that got hit by a car and she died. And I was asking you about some things. I think I was asking about the charges, because I thought it should have been like vehicular homicide, or, negligent something or other, negligent use of a vehicle, because the guy's license were suspended. And this was his third, I think, offense of driving with suspended license, and the brakes on the car weren't good. I think when I asked you about it, you said that we don't even have laws like that in Illinois or in Chicago, that wouldn't even be a thing, I believe you told me. And because in Wisconsin, pedestrians are supposed to have the right of way. But apparently that's not necessarily true, because when I talked to the district attorney in Milwaukee, they gave me some similar response as you did when I was talking about the charge, because the charge was driving while suspended, which resulted in a death. And I learned then that a lot of the prosecutors are going for what they know they can prove. So clearly his license was suspended, and clearly it resulted in a death. So that was kind of a no-brainer that he would get convicted on that, because that's exactly what happened. Whereas we as the family, we were looking for, something that, would bring more repercussion, since he had already been, cited for driving while suspended and all that kind of stuff. So to make a long story short, so my cousin, she died, and I know that nothing can bring her back or whatever. The DA told me that if he had been licensed, he would have gotten a ticket for it, which is so ridiculous to me. So I'm licensed. So right now, if I go out and run somebody over and they die, I'm just going to get a ticket for it? That just seems extreme. And it wound up, my cousin lost her life, but he got probation. And, we have been just devastated behind that decision. Again, just like with the family that you were talking about, when they said probation, it was like we relived the whole thing again, being at the hospital and seeing her, and, and then when everything went down. So I guess I don't know what my question necessarily is, but how could we have gotten a stiffer charge, or could we have?
Well, one, it's a different state, so all I know is Illinois, and I'll tell people in a minute. Like, I can talk in broad strokes about what the laws are, but all I know is in Illinois. And oddly enough, I started in traffic court, so that's what I've done the longest. And in traffic court, I had more than one case where I had a client who killed somebody, but they were charged with a misdemeanor. So you can, like he said, get a ticket. It would be striking a pedestrian in a walkway or something like that. Because as long as your behavior wasn't reckless, then they're not likely going to charge you with a reckless homicide. So that would be a felony here. So people step out in traffic all the time, and it's not necessarily the fault of the driver. I don't know the circumstances of your cousin, but I'm saying people step out in traffic, or, play chicken or try to cross the street, And just because someone strikes them, that's usually not the issue. The ones I had in traffic court, meaning they were charged with misdemeanors, it was only because they didn't stop immediately. That's the only reason they were charged. Then they were charged with leaving the scene of a personal injury accident or an accident that resulted in death. So, but if they had stopped on a dime, gotten out to render aid, they probably, like the DA told you, would have only gotten a ticket. What changes that if there was some behavior that made it reckless? So was there liquor involved? Were they drag racing? Were they, on a high-speed chase, being chased by a police officer and they run into somebody? We get a lot of those cases, you'd be surprised. Were they on a high-speed chase, being chased by a police officer and they ran into a house or a person or a car? So then that person would be likely charged with reckless homicide because their behavior was in fact reckless in some way. But simply getting into what would be a bad car accident and somebody dies doesn't mean that criminal charges will follow.
Wow. Yeah, we were really, that was tough. That was a tough one especially since, we looked at the fact that the car's brakes were really bad and he drove it anyway. But that just didn't seem to carry any weight.
Well, I mean, you got to prove that. You got to prove that he knew that I can't even imagine how a prosecutor will prove up that you knew your brakes were bad and you drove anyway. And that's just such, like you said, they like to prove cases they like to put on cases that they know they can prove. I will add this though. You said it was like his third driving unsuspended. Here, that would likely be a felony. And he would probably get more time just for driving on a suspended license than he would for taking your cousin's life.
Wow.
If he wasn't reckless in if he wasn't drunk, he wasn't high, he wasn't on a high-speed chase, he wasn't doing anything that made his actions innately reckless, they probably could have gotten prison time for him driving on a suspended license multiple times, and they could have charged him with that. So wow. That's what happens a lot of times. I'll have a client who's charged, say there's no accident involved. My client's got a DUI, but he's got a terrible record in terms of driving on suspended license. He might do prison time on driving a suspended license and do no time on the actual DUI. So it's tricky.
Yeah, this kid, he wasn't high, he wasn't drunk. He didn't have any other charges against him except the suspended license. Apparently he just gets his license suspended a lot. And he didn't have anything else going on. No other charges or anything. So, and he had just had a baby right before the final trial or whatever. And so, yeah, he got a little slap on the wrist. He's got, I think, 3 years probation. And if he doesn't get in any trouble, then he's all good. So, okay, so I've shared all of that. I'm gonna be quiet for a minute and let you give us a little taste of what we can expect on your segment each month. I know you have a little something planned for us, so go ahead and do your thing, Attorney April Preyar.
All right, so this is April Preyar, Preyar, criminal defense attorney from Chicago, South Side. And I've been practicing law for 22 years. Actually, it'll be 22 years in about 2 weeks. And in that time, I have done criminal law the entire time. So like I told Xavier, don't call in here asking me about probates and estates or trusts and any of that. And excuse the ringing in the background. I should turn that phone off before we started. But the thing that I love to do is to teach teens about what to do if stopped by a police officer. And what happens is when I'm teaching teens, I accidentally teach their parents, their teachers, their pastors, or whoever's in the room, because oftentimes adults think that we got it all figured out. We're like, oh, I've been stopped for 3-4 traffic tickets, I'm good. Or I got a cousin who's in the joint and he told me what to do and what not to do. And what happens is we oftentimes get it wrong. So like I told Xavier, I started by doing videos on Facebook. That grew into a board game. I now have an online course that I do for teens, but I'm really passionate about turning this generation around, because what I find is that the biggest problem facing us is not us, I say as a people, is not police misconduct, it's not Black on Black violence, it's not any of those things. It's the sense of hopelessness. Every single time I go to a classroom to speak to a teenager or a set of teenagers, there's always one kid who just throws their hands up. It's like, it doesn't matter what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna get shot anyway. It doesn't matter what I'm gonna do, the police are gonna kill me anyway. It doesn't matter what I'm gonna do, I'm not gonna live past 21. And so it's that sense of hopelessness that I am passionate, that I am committed to, that I am called to turn around. But I'll kick it off with, I mentioned to you that I had that viral video that got 2.5 million views. And the crazy thing about it was I just was teaching 4 simple things. I shot a quick video outside of the main courthouse here in Chicago, which is 26th in California for anybody who's in the area. And I just shot a video, it wasn't even 2 minutes long, shot it on my phone. And it was just called 4 Things Not to Do If Stopped by Police. So I would love to share those 4 things with your listeners. And they're going to be like, oh my God, these are no-brainers. This is so simple. But they're not quite as simple as you think. But before I get to that, before I get to those 4 things, I got to tell you where to follow me. I got to tell you where to check me out. So like I said, my moniker is the Justice Junkie, and I spell that a little bit differently because they're saying that there is no justice, there's just us. So it's JUSTUSJUNKIE, and you can follow me there on IG. You can follow me there on Facebook. I wouldn't suggest you go to LinkedIn because I post there probably 2 times a year because I think it's stuffy and boring. And I also have a YouTube channel. Huh? Did I fade out?
I agree about LinkedIn. Yeah.
Yeah, I hate LinkedIn. I even took read this little LinkedIn book on how to boost my, I don't know, ratings. I did everything the girl said. It boosted my ratings and I still hated it. So I just really don't go over there very much unless I'm posting like a media win. So follow me at those places that I said, Justice Junkie on IG, Justice Junkie on Facebook. And I also have a YouTube channel, and that is actually under my name. And that's April, like the month, no Y, no double L, no E on the end, APRIL. And last name, Preyar, and you reverse the vowels, it's PREYAR. And you can find me on there and check out some past videos. But back to those 4 things. So the 4 things not to do that I talked about in the video, I made sure that they were all R's, super easy to remember. I don't like to inundate people with information because I think that in a moment, you generally panic. If any of us see police behind us, we get sweaty palms, we start freaking out. We're like, oh, dang, what did I do? What's pulling me over for? You know, even before the panic of being hurt sets in, you like, what did I do? Why am I being pulled over? So I wanted it to be quick, easy to remember. So even if you're in a tough situation and you are panicked and it is dark outside and maybe you're by yourself, you would still remember what not to do. So these are the 4 R's. Don't run, don't reach, don't resist, and my favorite, don't run your mouth. So I'm gonna break those down real quick. So don't run. This sounds very sensible to another 40-year-old who is listening on the radio. It does not sound so sensible to a 14-year-old. A 14-year-old who is approached by a police officer is going to be like, I think I can outrun this fat cop. I'm on the track team. He looks like he's about 45 and about 45 pounds overweight. I'm gonna outrun him. But that can go real bad, real fast. And I'm telling you, this is the inclination of teenagers. I did an event even before I launched Justice Junkie. I partnered with some police officers and some defense attorneys. We did an event at my church and we did role playing. And I had the cops actually play cops, and they broke into small groups with the kids. And we set up the chairs like they were, in a car. And all of a sudden we hear this noise and everybody's attention is turned to this kid who literally, no joke, no BS, freaked out when a police officer approached the fake car made of folding chairs and said, and he was a passenger, and said, give me your ID or get out. He took off running in the auditorium we were in. He was not acting. He was generally, that was genuinely his natural response. He was like, I would get out of there. I would take off running. I wouldn't sit and deal with this. He didn't have anything on him. He didn't do anything wrong, but his inclination was to run. So I always like to tell this story. I had a client, I did a case with a retired judge friend of mine, and he had a client, he brought me in on the case, and this kid had the same initial reaction. A police officer, he's walking down the street in South Shore doing absolutely nothing wrong. walking. These two cops decide to harass him, like cops oftentimes do. Say, hey, kid, come here. He like, nah. Took off running, starts jumping over fences, hiding behind garages. I'm gonna outrun these two fat cops. But he couldn't outrun their radio. So they went on a chase for about 20 minutes, and there were about 8 or 10 cops involved in the chase. And it ended with the kid catching a bullet in his spine.
Yeah.
Because when he took off running, and I still don't know if this is true or not, the cops claim he was armed. So whether he had a gun or they found a gun, which yes, in Chicago does happen sometimes, he found a gun on the ground. They said that, I don't know how they justified it. He turned towards them with the gun. I don't know what story they told, but he caught a bullet in his spine and he is now paraplegic. So there are real consequences to running, and we need to teach these teens, no matter what you got on you, no matter what you're up to. I don't care if you got cocaine, ecstasy, crack, and marijuana in your pockets, plus 2 guns with the clips. You need to stand still, because I have a better chance of beating your case than I do of consoling your parents when they bring you home in a body bag. So that's don't run. The next one is don't reach. So don't reach, people think like, okay, I don't have anything in my car, I'm not reaching for anything. That's what's in your head. Cop doesn't know what you're doing. Cop doesn't know who you are. They walk up to the window of your car, hey, give me your driver's license. You immediately reach for your, most people keep it either in their visor, their glove box, if it's a woman, in the purse. That makes sense to us. Police officer doesn't know you. He doesn't know what you're reaching for. So I tell people, keep your hands at 10 and 2, and tell the cop, hey, my license is in my wallet. My wallet is located in this place. Can I reach for it? Don't just suddenly start reaching, because they're going to say that you made, quote, furtive movements. I've seen this in at least 50 police reports, the same words, quote, furtive movements, end quote. You suddenly started moving around in the car. You slid something under the seat. You reached suddenly, and they're going to think you're either reaching for a weapon or you're reaching to hide something. And either way, it puts you in harm's way, and it opens you up to having your person, your bag, your car searched. And I'm going to definitely cover searches in another show, but not today. So definitely don't reach, because at the very least, you put yourself in a bad position to possibly be hurt. My goal always is to keep you safe. That's first. We can worry about the legal implications later, and we're going to keep you safe so that you can battle in the courtroom and not on the corners. So the next one is don't resist. And I love this one because this is one that most adults get wrong. And so when most adults get it wrong, that means that the information that they pass along to their kids when they're giving the talk, which I absolutely do not condone and absolutely hate. But again, that's a topic for another day. If they're getting it wrong, then the information they're passing along to their sons, daughters, granddaughters, etc., is dead wrong as well. So don't resist. Most people think that means you're going to be kung fu fighting with the cop on the side of the car. That means you're going to be trying to disarm him and wrestling on the ground. And resist does not have to be that deep at all. Resist simply means you made your body go stiff when the cop tried to put you in the back seat, or you made your body go limp so that you're dead weight, or it means that you pulled your arm away when the cop tried to handcuff you, or it means you pulled your arm away when the cop touched you because he was trying to talk to you. So resisting can play out in a lot of different ways. And then I always get pushback on this, that in some states, I think there are about 4 or 5 states, you can legally resist an unlawful arrest. But I'm gonna tell you, I don't care where you live, I wouldn't try it, because that doesn't mean that you can't ultimately get charged with battery or something else in the process of resisting that arrest. So I'll tell this story. So I had a client, I wasn't gonna say where this happened at first, but now I am. I get a lot of barbershop cases, and a lot of barbershop cases turn out really badly. So one problem is it's kind of a community gathering space, but it's a place that police officers know that they can go find a whole bunch of Black men at once.
Right.
And they essentially know if they can find a whole bunch of Black men or Puerto Rican men or Mexican men, that they can harass them and probably find something on somebody. So probably find some felons there, probably find some folks who are paroled. You know, it's a good sport for them. It's a good day. So anyway, so I had an older client who had never been even stopped by a police officer in his life, just very clean cut, good dude, father, all of that, husband. He stepped out the barbershop to make a quick phone call. Little did he know that in the little village he was in, loitering, again, I put that in air quotes, loitering is illegal. And loitering outside of a barbershop is illegal there. And it means that it's a reason for the police to approach you and ask for your ID. This is
Just stepping outside to make a phone call is loitering?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was the cops determined it as loitering. And so they were able to approach him and ask him for his ID. In most states, you do not have to produce an ID if an officer approaches you, but you got to know what the laws are for your particular, not just state, but also municipality. So like in Illinois, I don't have to walk down the street and give you an ID. I may not even have we see all these voting rights issues. I might not even have a picture ID, especially if I'm a kid and I'm 14, maybe my school doesn't even have picture IDs and I don't yet have a driver's license. So not everybody's going to have a picture ID. So it will follow that a cop can't therefore just demand one. But anyway, in this particular village, they can. Now, whether that's constitutional or not, that's up for debate, but they can. So he steps out, makes a phone call. Cops determine this is loitering. They walk up, they go up to him, demand his ID. He knows what the state law is. He said, I don't have to give you anything. He turns and walks away. What he didn't realize is at that time, he is disobeying a police order. He's disobeying a police order. He thinks he's, okay, I'm just gonna go back inside. I don't want no smoke. I'm gonna go inside, leave y'all to it. They grab him at that point.
Oh my.
He turns and shakes them off. Don't touch me. And then now at this point, he's resisting arrest. And that's what people don't get. They're like, well, what arrest? What was it being arrested for? So I'll say this instead. Focus on the disobeying a police order. A police officer says, halt, stop, come here, give me your ID, stand still, face me. Those are all orders. If you do the opposite, even if you're thinking you're diffusing it, like, okay, I'm just walk off. I'm not dealing with this. You are disobeying a police order. So at that point, he had disobeyed a police order. And I tell you, I saw the video. There's body cam footage. Probably about 6 of them took him to the ground.
Wow.
All over standing outside of a barbershop and asking for his ID. But it goes further. So that's the first instance of quote unquote resisting or disobeying a police order. The next instance, same incident. So now he's handcuffed. Now he's being taken outside. His child was with him.
Oh no.
So now he's trying to make arrangements for his child to be taken, picked up by somebody. And the police are saying things like, get in the car. I'm not getting in the car. I have to figure out what's going on with my kid. Makes perfect sense to us. Makes perfect sense to parents. Makes perfect sense to, I don't even have kids. Makes perfect sense to adults. In the eyes of the law, you have refused and disobeyed a police order. So in the technical sense of a word, you are again resisting. So when I say these 4 R's are not as cut and dry and clear as they seem, they're a little bit tricky. That's an understatement. So at that point, you're resisting when you don't get in the police car when they tell you to. You don't turn around and face the car when they tell you to. You don't give them your arm so that they can handcuff you. Each step of that is resisting. Each step of that is a separate action that you can be charged for by the state's attorney or the district attorney, depending on where you live.
Wow.
And then the last R I said, which is my absolute favorite, so much my favorite that I have it on the t-shirt I'm wearing right now that y'all can't unfortunately see because you are on the airwaves and not on Zoom like Xavier and me. It says, shut up, lawyer up. And so I say, don't run your mouth, because what happens is if we get in trouble, whether you're a 6-year-old child or you're a 60-year-old man, you are going to pretty much try to talk yourself out of trouble, right? You're going to try to talk it down. Hey, it's not a big deal. I didn't do what you said I did. I didn't take that cookie out the cookie jar. I don't know what you're talking about, Mom. And you're going to try to talk yourself out of a situation. But what happens with police officers is you're talking yourself into more trouble because you never know what information the cop has. So I'll give this example. Cop stops you. You are, say, a 16-year-old kid. You are leaving band practice at your school. It's 4:00 in the afternoon. Cop walks up. Hey, kid, where are you coming from? Hey, I'm coming from school. I go to X school. I'm coming from band practice. Really? Wow, your school is a half a block away from the burglary we are investigating. You just placed yourself at the scene of the crime. Thank you for that information. You just helped me make my case. Come with me.
Oh my.
Sounds ridiculous, but this is what happens. People place themselves at the scene of crimes. People put themselves with other people who were involved in a crime simply by talking. Or this example, you tell the cop, oh, no, I was in the car, but I was the passenger. Oh, okay, thank you. We think that the shooter in the drive-by shooting was in the passenger seat.
Oh, wow.
You never know what you're telling the cops. So I always give this example. I had a client who was picked up by police, was suspected of a crime, and the detectives are not like what you see on TV. It's not like on Law and Order where they bang on the table and they grab you by your collar and they throw you into the wall. No, that's what Chicago was known for. We are the torture capital of the world. So we certainly have earned that under Detective Burge, who tortured and electrocuted and did all kinds of horrible things to Black men 30 years ago. But now they smooth with it. Now the detective's gonna act like he's your big uncle. He's gonna act like he's the father figure in your life. Hey, young brother, I know how it is in these streets. Why don't you just tell me what happened? They don't make you any promises. They don't tell you get to go home. But the implication from the tone and from the treatment is, oh, okay, if I just tell him what I did, I get to go. And so I had one client, and it was all on video, the entire interrogation. And that's exactly the demeanor of the detective, just very warm and welcoming, very familiar. And this is a young kid who's 17 years old. So what do you think he did? Within 10 minutes, he sang like a canary. Not only did he sing like a canary, he jumped up and acted out what he had done.
Oh my.
So, and this was all, and the guy never threatened him, never promised him anything. But the assumption was at the end of that, well, I was a good boy. I told you what I did wrong. So when do I get to go home? And I get that from adults who are 27, 37, 47. If I just tell them, yeah, I had 7 drinks. Yeah, I probably shouldn't have been behind the wheel of that car. Okay, I was honest. Okay, when you gonna let me go home? You don't get to go home. You get to go to the county lockup. And that's what they don't understand. And that's why I say I try to intervene with these teens. So I add on to that, shut up, lawyer up, because the minute you realize you're being detained by a police officer, and what moment is that? Maybe it's when you're handcuffed. Maybe it's when they pull you over and you're surrounded by 4 police cars and your car is blocked in. Wow. Maybe it's when you have 1 police car blocking you, but you have 4 officers with their guns drawn at your window. All those situations, I would say it's pretty safe to assume you're not free to leave. Well, what if it's not as clear cut? What if you're not handcuffed, but you're in the backseat of the police car and you can't get out because the car door is locked? Not free to leave. Say you think you're a witness, but you go to the police station and suddenly you're inside of an interrogation room, and when you try to turn the doorknob, you can't get out. All those are instances where you're not free to leave and you need to say nothing else but I want a lawyer, and then close your mouth. And I know you have listeners from all over Xavier, but if they live in Cook County, Illinois, like I do, at the police station, it's a relatively new program, but attorneys are free. What? We're the only county in the world but you have to ask for it. And so it's, cops ain't gonna advertise. They're supposed to have posters up at every police station letting you know this. Those posters probably rolled up in the corner in the storage room somewhere. But so they probably rolled up in the storage room somewhere. But
so are you saying that they can get an attorney like you for free?
Well, it used to, I would say, like me. So it started off as a program where there were volunteer attorneys. It was called First Defense Legal Aid. They've been in existence for 25 years, right? So, they had a handful of volunteer attorneys who would come in, and then they actually brokered a deal or worked it out with the public defender's office. So now that the public defenders receive that call on the hotline, and they send an attorney to the police station to represent you for free. All you have to do is ask. So what people don't realize is that the additional power in having an attorney show up at a police station for you isn't just so that they represent you and tell the cops you have nothing to say. It is really so that they serve as your witness. So again, I'll give this instance. A friend of mine, this is years ago, I had probably been practicing, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years. A friend of mine called me and said, "Hey, April," he lived west, I live south. This was an arrest in the south suburbs. I was dressed up for a date, by the way. Had on my little cute, sexy red dress with my back out. And I get this call, "Can you go to the police station?" What? So I go to the police station. I'm like, I ain't changing clothes to go to the police station. So I went to the police station, my little date dress. And I got there, and it turns out this kid had a mother and father, and they were in the lobby and had been left in the lobby for 3 hours. Nobody would let them see their 14-year-old son. So I get there, I'm like, what's going on? This is a minor. He's supposed to be allowed to see his parents. What they do in Illinois, though, they'll have an officer who's a quote unquote juvenile officer stand in as your parents.
Huh?
So yeah. Not all states do that, but we do that here. So, but anyway, his parents were there. They were not allowed to see him. They were already called, NBC News, and they called an attorney. I got there, and I'm raising hell in the lobby, like, what's going on? And so it's a lot of passing the buck, and I gotta call my supervisor, I gotta contact so and so. It's just a lot. I'm like run around, like, what is going on? Why are y'all not letting me see my client? Well, they weren't letting me see my client because they were whooping his butt in the elevator. They had him hemmed up in the elevator, and they were beating him about his body so that he wouldn't have marks on his face or neck. Yeah. But these dummies, these geniuses didn't know that the cameras in the elevator actually worked. They thought the elevator was old and the cameras didn't work. Well, it was all captured on candid camera. My understanding is they were all indicted and fired. But in that instance, I would have served as a witness to say, this is the time I got here. This is the person I spoke to at the front desk. This is how long I was kept in the lobby and kept away from my client. Mm-hmm. At that point, I started calling the state attorney's office again. So I would have a record on my phone. This is the time I called. Here is felony review. I called felony review. This is who I spoke to at felony review. This is how long I was still kept away from my client. And then this is what happened later. So I end up serving as a witness in case they say, "Oh, well, at 5:02, your client confessed to murder and said he buried the person under the floorboards." And I'm like, no. I was there at 4:59. And I told you my client had nothing to say. So any statement that he makes later, or that they lie and say that he made, which is really more common, doesn't come in.
Oh.
Yeah. So it can be quite powerful.
So if the attorney says that my client has nothing to say, even if you've said something, they can't use it?
If it comes after I'm present. So that's why I tell the clients, don't say anything. They say, "I want a lawyer." You say nothing else. I get there, and then I serve one as their witness and two as their representation. And so, yes, I've seen instances where the person called for a lawyer. The cops will still play dirty and try to interrogate you after I leave. And then they'll say, "Oh, he made a statement." Well, nope, the lawyer was there, and they invoked their right to remain silent. So that statement doesn't come in.
Mm.
I actually saw it happen on, they play games. I actually saw it happen on a murder case, literally, where the person was buried under the floorboards. It wasn't my case. I was an observer. I was an observer, and it was a big deal that the judge kept that out. Like, nope, y'all played dirty. He had a lawyer. This statement ain't coming in.
Wow, that's
Take their whole case. Take the state's whole case. But see, that's why you gotta, you still have to protect people's rights. It doesn't matter what they're accused of, what you believe, what crime you believe they committed. And that's why I tell people, some people think that the information I give out is just for quote unquote bad kids, at-risk kids, thugs, gang members, until a student gets arrested for some stuff and sings like a canary, and they're like, oh, but Jesus, he ain't no bad person. Well, the judge don't care that your kid ain't no bad person. Your kid did this crime, committed this crime, and then confessed to this crime, and nobody was there to protect their rights. And say the kid didn't do it, say the cops got it all wrong, well, you're not going to have any way to protect that person's rights if you don't have an attorney present to do so.
oh man, you said some really amazing stuff. You said something about in Chicago, you can find a gun laying on the street.
Yeah, yo, I learned that. I was new to. So the way it works, I was a public defender first. I was a public defender for 6 years. And so first 3 years I spent in traffic court. So I did DUIs in and out. No DUIs like the back of my hand. DUIs, driving on suspended license, did those in and out. Then I got transferred to 26th Street, the main courthouse. And couldn't have been one of my first cases, but it was one of my first serious cases. There was a kid who was 16 at the time. He had been transferred to adult court. And anyway, as the facts, and he was accused of robbing a police officer. Police officer was white. He was undercover. I'm like, I don't know how y'all pull that off, white police officers in Chicago. I would think that would be a red flag for the drug dealers. Like, oh, skinny white boy must be a cop. Don't sell him no drugs. But, 16-year-old kid was like, he wasn't even a drug dealer. The 16-year-old kid was like, this white boy, okay, he got some money. So he lies and says he has drugs. Meet me in the alley. In the alley, they had what's called a slot. I learned all this on this one case, a slot. I'm like, what in the what is a slot? A slot is literally a hole like behind a garbage can that all the kids in the community agree is like the communal gun. And they check that mug out like a library book.
What?
I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. It all came out. I could talk about all this. All this came out of trial. It was a slot. So a slot, I don't know what they call it now, but this is what they called it then. That was probably 20 years ago. It was a slot. So it was just a hole in the ground where they kept and it was like an honor system. You borrow a gun, you use it for your purpose, you put it back. So my client went to the slot, pulled out the gun, met the dumb cop in the alley. Give me all your money. You know you got money because you came to buy drugs. The kid don't even have no drugs. Oh, he's like, he just saw opportunity. So he sees the cop and he doesn't know he's a cop. I don't know why. Doesn't know he's a cop, shakes him down, gets his little $20 or whatever, hits him in the head with the gun, doesn't like knock him out or anything, just hits him in the head with the gun, takes off running. So like 20 minutes later, whatever, because he had a surveillance team that I guess while sleeping on their job, they all come 20 minutes later, catch my client and arrest him. But that's how I found out the whole concept about the communal slot. So yeah, there are not guns. There are guns around that this entire community of all teenagers shared this one gun and everybody would put it back when they were done. So think about that in terms of crime solving. Say somebody used the gun for a violent crime.
Right.
How many times it's changed hands?
Yeah, that's what I was actually thinking about. Like, what if somebody kills somebody and then you're the next one and I guess there's nothing innocent that you can do with the gun, but you know what I'm saying? Something like what this kid does, but he gets caught with the gun, but there's a murder with this thing. So then
they're going to try to say you committed the murder.
Right.
That's how sloppy they are in Chicago. I've had that too. They say you committed the murder because you found with this gun that 20 different kids have all used for different purposes.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And it's really sad that there's a group of kids that thinks this is a good idea.
Well, that's another whole other topic. That's why, and that's really why I do the work I do. But then that's why I wrote out. So I wrote out something called Lawyer Up Academy. So Lawyer Up Academy is a 3-part pre-recorded series where, teachers can buy it for their whole classroom, or a mom can buy it for her kids. And it's on demand, because I was getting a lot of requests to speak, like even during the pandemic, I was getting a lot of requests to speak. And it's like, no, I'm not going to hop on a plane and go to Tennessee and speak to your kids for free. Sorry. No, I'm not going to fly to California for some chicken and, promise that you buying one board game to come speak to 100 kids. No, sorry, not going to do it. So I did this to make it available to anybody, so that kids can learn these things. And then I realized kids also need, I say kids can be anybody under 22, but they also need soft skills like confidence. They also need communication skills, because what I'm realizing is most teenagers don't even talk to each other. They stick their heads in their cell phones and sit next to each other and text each other, or they stick their head in their video games. Like, they can't hold conversations with one another, let alone with an authority figure. They don't always know how to process their emotions. So especially with girls, they'll lash out and hit and slash. And so I rolled out something 2 weeks ago called Lawyer Up Live, where I'm going to bring on professional mental health professionals. I'm going to bring on lawyers, and we're going to cover these soft skills, because if you get stopped by a cop, you can know all the right things to do. But if you can't control your emotions, you have no impulse control, you cannot communicate, you're not going to be in a whole lot better position. Maybe you know not to get out and run. But if you cannot communicate and you're responsible when an authority figure is talking to you, or you lash out or you hit, that's not putting you in a whole lot of a better position. So that's why I have that program specifically for that reason, to reach some of these kids. Am I going to reach everybody? No, there are some stone cold killers in the world, not many, but I'm not gonna reach everybody. But I can reach kids who get caught up in nonsense, kids who get caught up in group crimes unwittingly, and I can reach them and turn it around.
So your primary focus is to educate the young people so that they don't wind up in really messed up situations. So what about the old people? Because I have learned recently that you still got some 50-year-old men that be going to jail.
Girl, I got senior citizens as clients. What are you talking about? My oldest client was 87.
You what? Listen,
I'm
know
not
what did he do?
kidding.
With that public urination or something like that?
No, it was a domestic violence case. But no, so you have, honestly, what I get most senior citizens for is DUI. Because in addition, so I told y'all the 4 things not to do, but then I have 3 things that you are to do. Okay. And these are the 7 rules taught in the game. So the other 3 things, they're also ours. So they are request a lawyer, which we just talked about. They are refuse all DUI tests and refuse consent to search. And so most seniors don't know that second one, where it says refuse all DUI tests. They are of the era that they believe that they have to do everything that, especially a white officer, if it's a white officer and it is a Black or Mexican male who is stopped, they feel like they have to comply with this authority figure. And some things you have to comply with, but some things you don't. So I teach a whole thing, comply versus consent. But when it comes to DUIs, they think that because the police officer asked me to do it, I must do it. I have to stand and touch my finger to my nose. I have to walk the straight line and count the number of steps. I have to stand on one leg. And you simply don't. You can simply refuse. But everybody I talk to is like, I didn't know I could refuse. And the cop isn't going to say, hey, you have this option to do it or not to do it. They're just going to play a game of Simon Says. Do this, do this, do this, do this. Okay, I'll stand on one leg, even though I know I had 7 beers and 2 shots. Yeah, I'll walk a straight line and count 9 steps, even though I'm not sure what my name is right now because I'm so wasted. Or then you get the aggressive ones who are like, I'm smarter than this cop. I'm going to beat these tests. There's no beating the tests because the tests are subjective. You cannot win. I've seen people perform really well on tests. So much so I'm like, oh, okay. In my mind, he quote unquote passed. But the police officer has already said, oh nope, you took the wrong number of steps. You didn't step heel to toe. You raised your hands while you were walking. He's like, wait a minute, I took 9 steps. I did the turn. You did the turn wrong. They're always going to say that you failed. So you cannot, like, why play a game that you cannot win? And this is what seniors don't know. So think about that. Add that to seniors, who most of whom have health problems. They got heart problems. They got a bum knee. They got a bad leg. They standing on the side of the road on one leg, shaking, trying to comply with what this officer is asking them to do. So, like, one of my favorite clients was, I had a client who was a diabetic, and most people don't know, if you're having a diabetic fit, a lot of the symptoms mimic being under the influence. Oh. In fact, so much so, if you're really sick, you can emit a smell that smells like alcohol.
Really?
So imagine an officer who has very limited training. He's gonna see this knee-jerk response. This dude is drunk. So one of my very first jury trials that I won was this older man who was having a diabetic fit. He didn't eat like he was supposed to. He didn't take his insulin like he was supposed to. All this stuff. And so he's on the side of the road and he woozy. And they like, woozy? Slurred speech? Can't walk in a straight line? This dude is drunk. You going to jail for DUI. And it was really that he was just a diabetic. So we brought his doctor in. I actually talked about this on Facebook. This is one of the trials my mom actually got to watch. And she came with my childhood friend who at the time lived in Germany. So the two of them came. My childhood friends are a year older than me. So they came, they watched the trial, and I told them in the hallway beforehand, look, be good. Don't say nothing. like, be good. Like, don't embarrass me. Don't say nothing. So of course, at a pivotal moment when I'm on my feet and my client is on the stand, and I had just asked him a question, what do I hear? But my mama yell out, just say yes. And the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. The jury heard her. The judge did not hear her. He was too far away. The state is looking like, what the hell? And the jurors all thought she was the wife of my client because they were about the same age. And they thought that my friend was his daughter. So we actually won the case.
Oh, wow. Okay.
When I tell you, I was like, and then I talked to her later. She's like, it was like watching TV. I was just yelling at the TV like I do at home. I'm looking like, no, Ma, no. This is not damn Law and Order, Matlock. What are you doing?
Right. She's watching Law and Order.
Man. But he was diabetic. And so we brought his doctor in and he explained all the symptoms if you're having a diabetic fit. And he knew this particular patient. So he could talk about, yes, he's had this happen before. He just wasn't in a car at the time. And we won our case. But anyway, the long and short of that is don't take any DUI tests and certainly don't blow into a breathalyzer. Do not submit to any type of blood or urine test because now you're giving somebody quote unquote scientific proof of how much alcohol was in your system.
So I have a question. And my source of information is questionable, but I was watching the Dave Chappelle show the other day.
Oh Lord.
He said that he was in his car. His friend was driving his car because he had been smoking weed and he was high. And so his friend was the designated driver, but Dave hadn't been drinking. He had been smoking. So his friend was the designated driver. I think he had some drinks, but didn't feel like he was drunk. And so he refused to take the breathalyzer. And so Dave said he's sitting in the car because he just knows that his friend is, going to be good because his friend hadn't drank that much or whatever. And he said he knew that things had gone horribly wrong when he looked up and his friend was in handcuffs getting put in the back of the car. And so when the officer came around to Dave Chappelle's side of the car, he said, what happened? And he said, your friend refused to blow. Well, he said it like that for the play on words. He refused to blow. But anyway, he refused to blow in the breathalyzer and they arrested him for that. Can that happen?
Yeah, they can still arrest you. So this is what people don't get. So a lot of people will refuse. Well, they'll take the test to say, hey, I got to go to work in a couple hours. I don't have time for this. Let's get this over with. And then they'll be surprised when they get arrested. And then even if you don't blow, if you don't take the test, the officer can still say, I believe you're under the influence of alcohol. And just for safety's sake, go ahead and arrest you. So in most states, there are both options under whatever your DUI statute is. If you take the test, if you don't take the test. What I'm telling you is if you don't take the test, you place yourself in a better position in Illinois and really all over all 50 states. One, to beat your criminal case because you will be charged with a DUI. But think about it. What's the cop going to testify to with that DUI? If you didn't take any of the tests, he can't say how you performed. All he can say is her eyes look bloodshot. She smelled of alcohol. There's no proof of how you smelled on any videotape. So it's his word against yours. And what else is he going to say? So that's when I ask cops, okay, well, because at that point, they only have the opportunity to see you walk from your car to the backseat of their car, from the backseat of their car to the police station, right? And at that point, you're handcuffed. So yes, at every point that you saw her walk, she was handcuffed, correct? Yeah. At every point that you saw her walk, she was assisted by you, correct? Yeah. While you were standing there telling her what her options were, was she stumbling, staggering? Did she fall? Did she lean against the car? Did she lean against you? Did she lean against your partner? Did she fall down? That's really effective in front of juries. They're looking like, she wasn't drunk. I mean, you'll be amazed. And then jurors are very quick to say, if there's no scientific evidence telling me this person was drunk, I am cutting them loose. So as long as you didn't throw up, pass out, punch the cop, curse the cop out, chances are you're going to get a not guilty. But if you take those tests, you are just digging a deeper hole for yourself and making it very hard for your lawyer to do anything for you. And a lot of these employers really do hold DUIs against you. Okay. So they'll look at it. There'll be a reason for them not to hire you. If you have any job involving driving, it's definitely going to hem you up. So I just tell people don't take the test. And then in most states, not all, in most states, you also have an opportunity to challenge the suspension because your license will be suspended. In Illinois, if you take the test, it's suspended for 6 months. If you don't take the test, it's suspended for 1 year. So then people are like, well, why wouldn't I take the test? Well, because then your attorney has the opportunity to come in and challenge the suspension before it ever goes into effect. And then maybe you won't be suspended a day. But that only happens if you don't take any of the tests. If they got you on video stumbling and stammering and you falling down and you can't find your nose, let alone touch it, then you are going to lose. You're going to lose your criminal case and you're going to lose your suspension hearing. But if you don't do anything but say, okay, you got me, put me in handcuffs, you don't say anything to the cop, you don't perform any tests, you don't fail any tests, then what is the cop going to testify to other than, hey, I thought she was drunk. I don't know how much she had to drink. I don't know when she drank. I don't know how many drinks she had. I don't know where she drank. I don't know, she didn't stumble. She didn't stammer. She didn't fall. She didn't lean against anything. She didn't throw up. She didn't do anything suspicious other than say, and then you could be like, man, I was sleepy. I worked a double shift. Hey, I was up with my baby all night. The cop got it wrong. You got it not guilty. But that doesn't happen if you take all those tests.
Okay. And what's the next one? Or was that the third one?
Oh, well, I'm trying to think. What did I say? Oh, request a lawyer. We talked about that. Refuse all tests. Oh, then I'm gonna do a whole show on searches and seizures. But the last one is refuse consent to search. So again, this is another thing. People just assume that if a cop says, hey, can I search your trunk, that you have to let them search your trunk. So I see this a lot. So I lived in Roseland in Chicago for years and years and years. And so I would see guys pulled over on the side of the road, clearly stopped for some minor traffic offense. Maybe they didn't turn their turn signal on before they turn the corner, whatever. And then you'll see the cop digging through their trunk. And I'm always like, how in the hell did he get to his trunk? That means the person consented to them searching their trunk. So the MO is they walk up, hey, sir, you were speeding. I'm gonna give you a speeding ticket. Hey, do you mind if we search your car? Because the catch is if you consent, then anything that they find, you can't really challenge. Same thing if a cop comes to the door of your house and grandma lets him in to search your bedroom. Well, grandma let him in to search your bedroom. He didn't need a warrant. So that's cops' way of getting around actually having to put in some work, actually having to follow the law, is to just ask you to let them do it. And so if you stop saying yes when the cop comes over to the car to give you a speeding ticket, how does that result in searching my car? If my car doesn't smell like weed, if you don't see a shotgun on the front seat or peeking out from underneath the passenger seat, what in the hell are you searching my car for? Well,
Right.
because my dumb self said you could. And the house example I give, that's like the most extreme example, because the law really does treat your house like the same. What's the saying? House is a man's castle. They really do treat your house like it has this heightened level of security and privacy attached to your home. So it is a real imposition for a cop to come in and search your house, and it's a high burden. They have to be able to show, how in the heck did you get into my bedroom drawer? Well, the easiest way is for some woman to let them in. And I say some woman because usually it's a mother or a grandmother. They get you to crack the outside door. Most people have two doors. Get you to crack the inside door, I should say. They've already opened the outside door. And then they are taught to wedge their foot between the door and the door frame and to push past you. So I tell people, do not open your door for a police officer unless you have personally called 911. And then in retrospect, they will go back and say, oh, this person consented, they let us in. And at least what they do in Chicago is then they'll come back with a piece of paper saying, having you sign it, and it's a consent to search. So the search is already over. They've already ransacked your house. They'll give you some idle threat like, well, if you don't sign, we're going to put your kids in DCFS. Like in Chicago, that's, Department of Child and Family Services. The thing is, I know it's true, because when you have dozens of clients telling you the same story and they don't know each other, and you hear it year after year after year after year, it's always a woman being threatened. It's always a woman who answered the door. One of the cases I mentioned before, that's how they arrested my client there. The cops came to the door. He was on house arrest. Here, house arrest is managed by the sheriff's department. They lied and said that they were from the sheriff's department. They were actually from Chicago police. The mom came to the door. She's legally blind. She goes to the door. She's thinking it's a family member who forgot their keys or something. So she goes, opens the door. Again, they're taught to put their foot in between the door and the door frame. That's what they do. Push past her, get into the house. Later say she let us in. She invited us in. She invited us in for tea. She told us to come in for coffee. And the woman is looking like, hell no, I had on my panties on my bra. You pushed past me. I was trying to cover up. I didn't know who you were. So that is the MO here. And then their threat is either you sign this piece of paper, or we're going to take all the minor children in the house and put them in DCFS custody.
And so how would they be able to just do that? You have to have some proof that something is going wrong in the house in order to just take everybody's kids?
Not at all. They won't, because they won't take your kids. It's just a lie. It's just a lie, but they know that it's leverage. They know that it's leverage to get in the door. They're there because they had a hunch. They're there because they have a suspicion. They're there because getting a warrant is a hassle. That means you got to go find a judge. You got to basically do your song and dance, sell your case to the judge, and have the judge say, yep, that's enough to go search the house, or nope, it's not enough to search the house. But that's time, energy, and effort. It's easier for them to go hustle some woman at the door of a house. Hey, ma'am, is your son home? Yeah, we just want to take a look around real quick, push past grandma, and get into little Ricky's bedroom. It's easier. Why bother with the judge when they can just justify it later and hope that this sad sap just goes ahead and pleads guilty and doesn't challenge the search?
So I've also heard, again, I don't know how credible my source was, but I'm agree with the Dave Chappelle.
Hope it's not Dave Chappelle again.
No, it's not Dave Chappelle. I can't even actually remember who told me this, but someone told me that you don't actually have to even answer the door if it's you don't have to answer the door for anybody, including the cops.
No, you don't. You don't. And this is why I tell people don't answer the door because, I mean, this is going to sound terrible and people have a real problem with this. I'm so used to them, folks shooting the messenger. It's not even funny. But anyway, so you don't have to answer the door because if they have a warrant, guess what? That part of TV is true. They're going to kick it in. They're going to use a battering ram. They're going to knock your door off the hinges. So there will be no question that they had a warrant. There's no need for you to go look through the peephole. Excuse me, do you have a warrant? Can I see your warrant? No, because if they have a warrant, they're kicking that door in. You need to stand back. So there's no question. You don't have to facilitate. Let the cops do their job. They almost never get warrants. And of the warrants they get, most of them are based on fabricated confidential informants that don't really exist, or at least that's how they get down in Chicago. So
Wow. Wow.
I've seen a lot. I did want to touch on something though. When you talked about the Dave Chappelle show, I haven't seen any of that, but the being high, there's DUI marijuana, and people believe that just because there's this sweeping change across the nation that, you know, recreational weed is being legalized in more and more places. Even here in Illinois and in Chicago, it's very specific. You can't smoke in your car. You can't get in your car after you smoked. You can't, like, I see people, I walk down the street and I'll get a whiff of weed because somebody is walking. You can't smoke weed on a public way. Like, read the damn statute. It's very clear. So you can still get DUI marijuana. That hasn't changed. I've represented many people on DUI marijuana, both before it was legalized and after it was legalized, because you can't have anything in your system that's going to impair your ability to operate a motor vehicle. So no different than that NyQuil. On the back of it, it says don't drive after taking some NyQuil. You can't drive after taking some hits of some marijuana. Like, you can't do it. And it's more difficult for cops to prove up. I mean, all they really have to go on is the smell. But what I found is more and more people drive around with the weed in the car. And so the cop is like, 2 + 2 = what? I got you. Like, I got the weed in the ashtray burning. I got the car reeking of marijuana, and I got your dovetail telling me you just smoked. Man, that's a grand slam. So I tell people you can get DUI marijuana, and then they want to argue, well, it's legal here, or they want to say things like, I smoked a few hours ago. Yeah, and you still just admitted that you had it in your system when you hit the road, and the cop is going to be proving impairment, and now you have admitted to him that you smoke marijuana. It doesn't matter if you bought it from the, what they call them, dispensaries.
Yep.
Is that what they call it? Dispensaries, or if you bought it from the weed man on the corner. It doesn't matter. You're not supposed to drive with weed in your system. And if you admit to it and they find it and they smell it, guess what? You're going to end up with a DUI marijuana.
Wow, that's the actual charge, DUI marijuana.
Yeah, we got several subsections: DUI drugs, DUI combination drugs, and alcohol.
Wow.
I mean, like I said, it is harder to prove because they have to be able to prove that, you know, but normally people admit to it. Oh, I smoked a couple hours ago, because they think that's better than saying they just smoked or they were smoking in the car, and it's no better.
Yeah, but a couple hours, if you smoked a couple hours ago, you probably down by then. You coming down.
Yeah, but that's not how the courts see it. People got to remember, the courts are always 1 or 2 steps behind actual science.
Oh.
So we might know that as lay people, but remember, marijuana stays in your system for weeks. I think it's up to 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So technically, you can go in for, say you got into a car accident, a fender bender, you get treated at the hospital. They take blood as a routine measure of your treatments, and they find THC in your system. You will be charged with DUI marijuana.
Wow.
Even though you smoked it 6 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 3 days ago, 4 days ago.
Crazy. That's crazy.
Now this burden is on you to come prove something different. They're going to say, yep, you had it in their system, got into a bad accident, that shows impairment, DUI. Boom.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, and I'm going back to the slot a little bit.
Imagine them just like, it's not just slots, it's literally drugs. And I hate, I mean, you know, especially people from outside of Chicago, they're gonna be like, oh my God, I'm never going to Chicago.
Man, I'm telling you, because so I've lived here, pretty much since 2009, right? I'm not from Chicago though, but I've been here for a minute now, and I learned so much, in conversations, and I'm always like, what? Really? So now one of the things, so with this slot thing, because a lot of the stories that I hear is that people feel like to some degree the crime is at the rate it is in Chicago because there's some cahoots between some of the gangsters and the police. And one of the things that they were saying is that a lot of these elaborate guns, the AKs and all those other big, guns that they wind up having in these crimes and stuff is actually the police drop them off in those alleys. Do you, in your experience, think there's any truth to
that? Them dropping them off in the alleys, I don't know. I've heard of crates of guns being dropped off on train tracks. I've heard of crates of guns being dropped off in certain neighborhoods. I don't know if police are doing it or not. What I have heard of, and I would say follow the news. So these TAC teams, these tactical teams of cops, every few years they'll get raided and shut down. And they usually get shut down because the cops are playing both sides, meaning they will shake down the big drug dealers for guns and drugs. They will hold on to some of the drugs so that they can plant small amounts on smaller players. They will take the money so that they will have these drug dealers under their thumb, and they are playing both sides. And you'll see cases like that. They'll hit the news. There'll be a big, that's why so many of these tactical teams get shut down. Like even one of the cases I mentioned recently was another barbershop case, and I was saying all those cops over the last 10 years have been promoted, but all of them will say, yeah, I was on a gang team. That gang team got disbanded. We were on another gang team. That gang team got disbanded. When they're getting disbanded, oftentimes that's what it's about. Somebody started playing both sides. Maybe not all of them, but somebody shook down the big time drug dealers, held onto some drugs to plant smaller amounts so they could put them, they still have these quotas, and they still have to make arrests. So to place on other people who maybe weren't even involved in any criminal activity.
wow.
They do have access to guns. I've had clients say, look, I swear before God that gun was planted on me, or those drugs were planted on me. I've even had federal juries who believed, this was one of our first big cases. This guy got $100,000 for a knot on his head. So he was blind in one eye, completely blind in one eye, and he was, moved around the neighborhood on a bike. And so he was riding on a bike, and this dirty TAC team of white cops came and knocked him on his blind side. They knew he was blind. They knocked him on his blind side so he didn't see them coming, knocked him to the ground, arrested him, and they planted drugs on him. And so, that sounds far-fetched. Oh my God, that's completely made up. Well, how about 2 different juries reached the same conclusion? That's how dirty these cops were. So first, the criminal case, he beat his criminal case because that jury of 12 people believed that these dirty cops planted drugs on him. And then he sued, and we did a civil trial, and that jury also believed that these dirty group of cops who had been sued multiple times for similar incidents had also planted drugs on him. Wow. So I say all that to say people think I hate cops. I really don't. I sound like these white people hate Black folks. I have police officer friends. I have one Black friend. No, so I really do. But there are packs. And if you look back at the packs, because we do depositions of these cops, you'll find out they all went to high school together, that they've known each other since they were very small. They all grew up in the same suburbs together. They all wanted to become cops together. They all got assigned to the same unit together. They all ended up on the same drug team together. So if you think these men are not going to have each other's back at 40, who have been friends since they were 14, and now they're doing a dirt together, You really think one of them's gonna rat the rest of them out? So that's when the whole team goes down. So are they out here planning guns in neighborhoods like that? I don't know. Are they planning individual guns and drugs? Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, that was one of my questions. Another one is, so I've had some thoughts on, because Chicago and crime kind of always roll in the same sentence. How, from your experience and how you see things, I know that what you're doing, that is because that's kind of, as I had thought of some stuff, that would be one of the things that definitely is needed on how to interact with them. But what do you think could be done to stop the crime, the gangs and just all of the stuff what do you think could be done to do away with some of this?
See, I've always see a lot of people turn to policy change. I've never thought that policy change was really how you have a widespread effect. I've always thought it had to be more grassroots. So it's actually going to sound very basic and very simple. It really is each one teach one. It really is a matter of each one of us snatching up one of these little boys by the back of his neck and saying, I'm gonna mentor this kid. And are you going to reach everybody? No. But what happens is you get a few good kids who end up becoming leaders and they're ambassadors to the rest. And so that's how you turn things around, because you always have to look at the root of why kids turn to gangs. Normally they turn to gangs because there's some sort of chaos in their homes. Maybe the chaos is, the chaos is always based in poverty. It's always based in lack. Sometimes it's based in mental illness of one parent or both, or absence of parents. What I'm finding is a lot of times, we had a rash of carjackings here, and everybody would be on Facebook talking about, arrest the parents and where are the parents. I'm like, y'all assuming these kids got parents. Like, I think so many times we assume that kids come from the same background as us. A lot of these kids don't know their parents, or their parents have been in the streets since they were born, or they're being raised not by grandma, but great grandma. And so I think that there are so many different levels to it. It's based in poverty, it's based in unemployment, it's based on all the mental health centers in the city getting shut down by Rahm Emanuel. It's based on not having productive activities for kids to do in all neighborhoods and access to productive recreation. So any one of those, so if it's like, if each adult found one thing that they were passionate about, so like, oh, like I'm passionate about this board game and want to go into high schools and want to have one-on-one interaction with teens and call them out on their BS, and and pull the Starkey one to the side and make them my best friend by the end of my 45-minute session. Or if yours is, I really want to confront the poverty and give jobs to teenagers in neighborhoods where their parents might be struggling or their parents might be absent. Whatever it is, it's about all of us stepping up. That's really what it's about, not pointing to the government and saying, swoop in and take care of these kids, not shaking our head when we see them on the corner and acting like we're scared of them. It's about literally going and running up to the back of them, grabbing them by the back of the neck and saying, okay, you're mine, I'm going to take care of you. I'll never forget, I had when I had my first rental property. It was a 3-unit, and it was in Pullman, which is actually a really quiet neighborhood. It used to be its own town, but I had a 3-unit over there, and I had my neighbor. She sold me my building, and she lived next door. And eventually we had like little groups of gangbangers, drug dealers on the corner, even though it's this really nice, quiet family neighborhood. She would get up in her robe with her curlers in her head, and she would march to the corner of her house slippers and tell these little boogers that they had to get off the corner. And everybody was like, girl, are you out of your mind? They gonna hurt you, whatever. But every single time she did, they listened to her because nobody else was talking to them. Everybody else was either running scared, ignoring them, sneering at them. She walked right up to them and was like, if you don't get your butt off my corner, reducing my property, my property value, we're gonna have a problem. And it worked. Every single time she did it, they scattered, they went elsewhere, and they got to the point where, oh, here she comes. And they stopped coming to our corner. So my point is, stop acting like you're scared of these little boys. Stop acting like, that they run the streets. Pull one to the side and be like, you're mine. You're mine. You're my responsibility. Whether he got a mama at home or grandmama at home or he's eating out of garbage cans, there's a reason he turned to that life. He didn't do it for kicks. He didn't do it to be cool. He didn't do it for street cred. Like, that's all BS you hear in rap songs. Like, there's a reason he's out there. Find out what the reason is and pour into him. And, maybe you have some with severe mental illness that you're never going to reach, and they're true sociopaths, but that's not the majority.
Wow. That I agree with you 1,000% on that. And I have a plan that I want to put into effect at some point. But us serial entrepreneurs have to prioritize our stuff. So
gotta chase the biggest fire.
So I'm getting there, but right now I'm still here. I wanted to share my my one run-in, well, aside from busted light in the back, but my one run-in with the police. Okay. And I talked. And so I used to, I did event planning for years, and I did it in corporate America. And so one year I did the boats. So we had two boats, Spirit of Milwaukee and Sundance cruise lines. And so the Spirit of Milwaukee, we went to Racine, right? And we did this cruise over there for Johnson & Johnson, because that's their headquarters over there or whatever. And so we're over there, and the news is filming the boats and all of that other kind of stuff, So then I was the operations director at the time. And so I had, petty cash. And since we were going to a whole other city, and I came by land because it was going to take them 4 hours to get to Racine from Milwaukee on the water, because of course they had to take the boat. And it would take me like 25, 30 minutes. So I wasn't doing 4 hours on the boat and then doing a whole cruise too. We weren't doing that. So anyway, cruise is over, and, they're taking the boat back. I had to stay until they, took the boat back, because I'm responsible for all of that stuff at that point. Right. And I have petty cash in my trunk. And I didn't know at the time. Well, anyway, let me continue with the story. So I'm driving down the street, and I have on a captain's shirt, and I have a hat. You clearly know I'm probably not running around life dressed like that just on the regular.
Yeah.
I can't remember why I got pulled over, but I got pulled over. And whenever I get pulled over, I'm just like, oh, they're after me? Because I'm that person that drives like maybe 5 miles over the speed limit. I like follow all the rules and stuff, So when they pull me over, I'm like, me? They want me? What they want with me? So I pull over and stuff. And I don't know, like you said, giving them information, you don't know what they already know. So I don't know what had happened. Maybe my car fit a description or whatever. I don't know. So they pulled me over, and he asked me, I can't remember what he asked me because it was a long time ago. Anyway, I wound up not handcuffed, but in the back seat of a police car. So I'm kind of freaking out because I'm claustrophobic. So once I got back there, I realized that the windows were up. It was summertime too. And you can't unlock the door back there, and get out or anything. So my claustrophobia and the seats are really close. So it really started kicking in, and I started having a little bit of an anxiety attack. And so I kicked the window. I started kicking on the window because I was getting really hot, and I felt like something bad was about to happen. The police officer came over there, and I told him, I said, I ran the boats that was just here. We just did a cruise for Johnson & Johnson. I said, it was all over your TV stations. So he called somebody. And the only thing that got me off was because they verified that, yes, that there was a big cruise for the company, and it was all over the TV station. And I had on a freaking shirt. That was what I couldn't understand. Can't you see that I'm not dressed like normal people? When I told him the first time what I was doing over there, they should have believed me then. But the problem was, he asked if he could search the car. And so when they searched the car, they went in the trunk. And what did they find? All that money in the trunk. So I don't know what they thought I had did or how they asked me, where'd all this money come from? And that's when I told them the story. And yeah, I wound up in the back of the police car because of all the money. Thank God for TV. Lord have mercy.
Yeah, see, the thing is, and this is how I start off every time I talk to a group of kids, I do this thing where I say, hey, if I'm gonna yell out a bunch of descriptors, if the descriptors apply to you, stand. If the next descriptor applies, you continue to stand. If not, sit down. You'd be amazed how kids can't follow these directions, but that's another. So anyway, so I'll say black. And then everybody in the room stands up usually. And then I'll say male and all the girls will sit down. And then I'll say between 5'7" and 6'2". Usually that's about all the boys are still standing. And then I'll say between 15 and 25. All the boys are still standing. The teachers have usually sat down. And then I'll say black shirt. So maybe a couple of kids sit down. So, but most time it's most of the room. And I'll say you fit the description. And then I'll say, how does that make you feel? And then they'll say, like a victim, targeted, whatever. And then I explain to them, when a police officer gets a call on the radio, they hear exactly what I just yelled out. They don't see a picture of you. They don't get a video. Even if there is a video, they don't get it over their car radio. They get the description I gave and they get a vicinity. So they'll get an address and they'll stop everybody within 2 miles of that address. Now, is everybody in 2 miles of that address who is black and male between 15 and 25? And you realize how broad the description was. 5'7" to 6'2". That's no exaggeration. 5'7" to 6'2", 15 to 25. No facial hair, no skin complexion. So when a cop is getting this over the radio, they're just rounding up whoever fits that description in that area. Obviously, 99% of the people they're rounding up weren't involved in the crime. But that means that you can still get caught in that web. So who knows what the description was that when you were stopped, Xavier, who knows if it was of your car? Who knows if it was of an individual? Who knows if it was of a dark sedan headed in this direction? They get a very general description, and then they start putting together pieces of a puzzle. And that's why I tell people to be quiet, because at that point, one, they don't usually have a whole lot of information to go on, but they're building a story that makes sense to them, so they can sell it to a prosecutor. It doesn't matter. You'll be amazed how many of my clients come in my office and bust up laughing. They like, this stuff didn't go nothing like what you just read to me from that police report. They'll be like, that is so completely bad. And they'll be like, I did something wrong. Like, I did something wrong, but everything you read to me is completely backwards, because the cops are making a story that makes sense to them. It doesn't matter if it's the truth. It doesn't matter if it's exactly what happened. It's a story that makes sense to them, that they can testify to, that they can sell to a prosecutor to make sense in front of a judge or a jury. And so the more you tell them, all you're doing is giving them details so that they connect the dots in their own head, whether that's really what happened or not. So no, I would have still said, don't say anything. Certainly don't consent to a search, but that did work out for you. And I found also the older you get, and if you're driving a nice car and if you're dressed well, a lot of times you can skirt some of the rules that I teach. But, in general, I teach to that 14-year-old kid who doesn't have the communication skills that you and I have, who doesn't have the resources to get on the phone and say, hey, I know a lawyer, come down to the police station and meet me. I always laugh, if I ever got arrested, you about to have the whole damn bar association at the police station for me. I have a friend like that. He got arrested, literally his first court date. He had every black lawyer in Chicago lined up in the courtroom looking like, Judge, we dare you to go forward with this case. And magically his case got dismissed. Sure. But the older you get, the more, you have more resources, and sometimes you can talk your way out of the situation, but I can't teach that because that's not uniform. That's not something that whether you're 14 or you're 54 that you can use. I have to teach what the majority of people can have work for them.
And another thing that I take away from that is, you said you have an attorney friend that wound up arrested in court. So any of us, it can happen to any of us. For like in my case, I was just going back from work, basically. I was doing absolutely nothing. But what if I had ran into one of the dirty Chicago police that planted some drugs on me with all that money that I had and tossed a gun in there?
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I don't even drink, and I wouldn't blow in the breathalyzer. Like, that's how little I trust Chicago police. That's how little I trust police of any municipality. I don't drink ever, and I would not blow in a breathalyzer.
Okay.
I don't ever carry anything in my car. I've never used drugs, smoked drugs, nothing. And I'm still not going to let you search nothing in my vehicle ever.
Okay. Well, me either now. Nope.
Yeah, because they'll say if they found a large amount of money, it's drug money. And they'll confiscate it. That's the thing. You're fortunate you got that money back. They could have easily said, we believe these are drug proceeds, and we're going to confiscate this money.
Well, I'm sitting there in a captain's shirt, clearly.
They'll lie and say they won't take your mugshot, and they'll conveniently forget what you had on. It'll be your word against theirs. I've seen it. I've literally seen it all.
So I got one last question before we wrap up, or before I let you wrap up and all that kind of good stuff. So listen, you hear me? This between me and you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I got this parking ticket. There was no sign. Ain't no sign. Apparently the sign is on the other side of the street. I never saw the sign. It's facing the other way. I never came across that. I never came that way to see this sign that says no parking in Country Club Hills between 2 and 6 a.m. I didn't see that sign until
I believe it.
Until after I got the freaking ticket. And then I was out there. I'm like, I'm gonna take a picture and show them that there's no signs. So I took a picture on the side I was parked on, and there was no signs. And then I went on the other side to take a picture, but then it's a collage of signs. It's like 4 signs all on these 2 little boards. And the one that stands out is the speed limit. You still barely even see that sign about the 2 to 6 a.m. So how do I get out of that?
Well, I would say use your photo evidence, and but I will say most of those little municipalities, when they issue tickets and you go to contest them, it's really just a collection agency. And oftentimes they will completely discount any photo evidence that you have, because it's literally, I've sat in those representing clients, and it's literally, okay, $500 for you, $300 for you, $200. It doesn't matter if you can test it or not. But if you have photo evidence showing that you were parked on the other side and that you were not facing that direction, you had no reason to look in that direction, no reason to check in that direction before parking there, I would go for it.
Oh, I like that. You know what? I was going to tell them about the sign and then being on, but I had no reason to go in that direction. I had no reason to look in that direction. And there's no sign on my side of the street. Girl, you just helped me. All right.
I would videotape it too. So sometimes you get a better idea from a videotape than you can from still photos.
Okay. All right. I love that. So now let the listeners know, when is your regular show? You'll be joining us when?
The first Monday, I thought it was the first Friday of the month. Is that right?
I don't have the thing in front of me. I thought you would know.
I was gonna say it said the first Friday of the month, but this isn't the first Friday, so I'm a little bit.
No, this is just your launch show. The launch.
Oh yeah, this is gonna be the first Friday of every month. I will be on between 12 and 2, and remember, we'll be doing criminal defense. We'll also be doing police misconduct, and I know enough about landlord tenant to put in a thimble. So maybe we'll do a little bit of that. I mean, in a thimble, and about as much of personal injury to put maybe in two thimbles. So maybe we can cover some of those topics. But we'll be doing a hot topic, one from the media, something of the likes of R. Kelly, Bill Cosby, those sorts of things. We'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about, coming out of this pandemic and how that's affecting the courts. So we've been zooming away. So we'll have some of that coming up. We'll be talking about searches and seizures. And what I want to do is interview and introduce y'all to some folks in my amazing network who are doing this work on a daily basis. And I want to do a contest on a name for my segment, because I'm not sold on what to do if. So we're gonna have to roll out a contest. I'm gonna do some giveaways. So y'all start brainstorming now about what we can call this legal issues, this criminal show with a defense slant, because everything else in your life, I'm telling you, you've seen it from the prosecutor side, from the judge to the prosecutor in the courtroom to the judges in higher court. Most of them were previously prosecutors. You ain't got none of that going on over here. I got it all from a defense slant. We're going to do it from the streets and go from there.
Okay, that is excellent. I'm so excited about your show, and I'm definitely looking forward to it. I can't wait to talk about the R. Kelly thing, because I got some questions. I definitely got some questions. I've seen both of those surviving R. Kelly shows, and I feel for the victims, but I still got some questions. And it's not about where were the parents, because they show you where the parents were during those times. But so I definitely have some questions. So do you have any final words for the listeners before I wrap everything up?
Like I said, follow me on all the different social media platforms at JUSTUSJUNKIE. Again, there is no justice, there's just us. I'm flipping that paradigm on its head and bringing justice from the courtrooms to the corners to the classrooms. Peace.
All right. Thank you, Attorney April Preyar. And I'm gonna give you a standing ovation. And I am looking forward to your next show on the first Friday in so that would be, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. That would be November 5th. November 5th will be the next show, Friday, November 5th from 12 to 2. So you guys put that on your calendar, because I know you don't want to miss the next show. And I am still looking for correspondence to do the What's Hot segment, so you would have to come on and share the hot events going on in your city, any great gossip going on. Like we talked to Nicole yesterday, and she was talking about the fact that Ready to Love is being filmed in DC this season. So she has some hot gossip about that. And you'll also be responsible for the movies and shows and books that you feel are hot and are good options for Netflix and chill nights. Yeah, we're going to get a good movie and we're going to chill, because it's about to be winter time for most of us. And chill is what we're going to do. Chill, chilly, cold, freezing, all of that kind of good stuff. So the cities that I'm looking for correspondence in is Chicago, Dallas, Atlanta, Miami, New York, New Orleans, LA, and Vegas. So if you are in any of those cities or know anybody in those cities that are always in the know of what's going on, connect them with me on my Facebook page, Xavier Fox. If you are a promoter in either of those cities and would like to Zoom in on Thursdays and let everybody know what events you have going on, please visit my Facebook page, Xavier Fox, to get the Zoom info. Also, I have podcasts coming up November 20th from 3 to 4. We're going to talk about the evolution of relationships, and we'll have men's view and women's view. My website is xavierfox.com, and my book is The Men in My Life and What I've Learned, and you can purchase the autographed copy on my website, or you can get the Kindle or just paperback version on Amazon. All right. Follow me, Xavier Fox, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. All right. So I am signing out till Monday. Our show will be on from 12 to 2 this Monday instead of 7 to 9 a.m. We had a little mix up, but you will meet our guest host, Eric Prince, who is a naturopath, and he will be telling us how to get healthy and in shape. Until then, stay safe and be prosperous. This is Xavier signing out.